the situation in the Middle East changes on a minute-by-minute basis. We're always looking at regionally what other developments are happening. Yemen, for example, yesterday is one of those examples of how this can become even bigger and broader. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Let's start, though, with the attack on the refugee camp, Jabalia, from yesterday. We have the first element here you can put on the screen. This is some footage from the bombing of the refugee camp in Jabalia. 50 confirmed dead so far, according to reports, about 150 missing. Ryan, since we saw this, and if you're watching this, you see people carrying bodies out of the rubble. Since this happened yesterday, there was another bombing of the same camp, actually just today, before we started taping this, right?
Right, this hour we're getting news. Yusuf Munir, who's been a guest on this program before, actually just a couple weeks ago, I believe, was reporting that there's been another airstrike in this same refugee camp just within the last couple of hours. The previous one, witnesses said 7 or 8 missiles struck the area, just annihilating entire apartment blocks. The new strike, according to Munir, is a similar, annihilating blocks of apartments, creating massive craters. And what's remarkable is the way that even Wolf Blitzer, and we'll talk about Wolf Blitzer's background in a second, was appalled at the carnage that he was witnessing. I think we have him on CNN here last night.
But even if that Hamas commander was there amidst all those Palestinian refugees who are in that Jabalia refugee camp, Israel still went ahead and dropped a bomb there, attempting to kill this Hamas commander, knowing that a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, presumably would be killed. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what you're hearing, Wolf. We're focused on this commander, again, who you'll get more data who this man was. Killed many, many Israelis. We're doing everything we can. It's a very complicated battle space. There could be infrastructure there. There could be tunnels there. We're still looking into it, and we'll give you more data as the hour moves ahead.
But you know that there are a lot of refugees, a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children in that refugee camp as well, right?
This is the tragedy of war, Wolf. I mean, as you know, we've been saying for days, move south. Civilians that are not involved with Hamas, please move south.
I'm just trying to get a little bit more information. You knew there were civilians there. You knew there were refugees, all sorts of refugees, but you decided to still drop a bomb on that refugee camp, attempting to kill the Hamas commander. By the way, was he killed?
I can't confirm yet. There'll be more updated. Yes, we know that he was killed.
It's like the best journalism I've seen from Wolf Blitzer in years.
Yeah, and Wolf Blitzer. And did you notice in there that he said that there might have been tunnels there?
Yes.
Like you can't blow up an entire refugee camp filled with people because there might be tunnels underneath it.
The thing is,
clearly they can, and they're going to, but
if there are tunnels, then say there are tunnels. Right. And if there is, they haven't named still yet.
They just did. Nassim Abu Ajina, who was listed as a battalion commander and was involved in commanding one of the battalions that was involved in a massacre at the Kibbutzim outside of Gaza. So, but not a person with direct culpability in the atrocities that were committed on October 7th, but not a high-level commander either.
Yeah, and I think that was a big problem yesterday. I'm glad that they've since named him, but all day yesterday, as you're getting questioned like this and saying we can't name the guy yet, et cetera, I think that's a real problem to not be able to say publicly why you did it. And the tunnel thing, to your point, actually reminded me of that. And so, I mean, again, we've had these conversations for weeks now, and I think generally disagree on some big points. I do think, and we're going to get into actually another clip of Wolf Blitzer, I think this is a really big problem going forward, obviously, for public-facing, forward-facing Israeli officials who are going to go in the media and have this conversation.
Right, and Wolf Blitzer in the 1970s wrote and edited an AIPAC newsletter. He spent the 1980s as a correspondent in Tel Aviv. Right before he became a household name in the Gulf War, he was a Washington-based correspondent for an Israeli newspaper. This is somebody who literally worked for AIPAC, who is saying, let me get this right. You knew that there were thousands of civilians in this area and you dropped these high explosive bombs anyway, right there. And he said, this is a tragedy of war, is what the IDF spokesperson said. Well, it's also a war crime.
Well, and that's, okay, so we're going to play the next clip, but we talked about this in reference to John Kirby last week. John Kirby gave that answer, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in the next segment, where he said war is ugly, and I think he used the word messy.
Bloody.
Bloody, right.
True.
Right. Yes, and I think I said something like, this is, at least it's honest. And I mean, that's the problem with, in this clip in particular, at one point he says, well, it's the tragedy of war. And in other points, he sort of dodges and jumps around. It is true that Israel did tell people to evacuate. It's doing the same thing right now with hospitals in Gaza. Palestinians are saying, we don't have anywhere to go because Israel has continued to bomb the south.
Yep.
And so you leave your house, you go to these, according to the Associated Press, some of these shelters are triple overflow. So they're completely packed, yes, obviously. And so you just have this impossible situation where Israel has an enemy that says it should be wiped off the face of the earth and just massacred civilians. But that enemy also lives in a densely populated, tiny crowded territory, is, careful about how it conducts its operations in civilian areas. So it's a horrible situation. You have to be able to answer questions like that from Wolf Blitzer.
Right, and the U.S. saying from the mouth of the president and then from the mouth of Kirby that civilian casualties are the price of war. They're unfortunate, but it's the price of war. It's just this is what happens in war, is a green light to Israel to do what it's doing. And so, as the United States expresses concerns about the loss of civilian life in this strike, remember that they are the ones that ahead of time gave it the green light by creating the space to allow for it to happen. Somebody pointed out that in 2002, or maybe 2003, right after, very soon after 9/11, Israel struck the leader of Hamas and a founder of Hamas and killed him along with 7 civilians. George W. Bush put out one of the sternest kind of statements condemning the action, condemning the loss of civilian life, saying that there's no justification, even if you're attacking the commander, like the commander, not a battalion commander,
right,
but like the head of Hamas. Right. Killing 7 civilians along the way is an unacceptable price to pay. That's George W. Bush,
right,
who later would have more blood on his hands than probably any president in 100 years. And for him to say that this is too much, and now to get very little reaction from the White House to who knows how many civilian casualties we're going to have. And it's almost untoward to be kind of quibbling over the numbers when you look at those images. All right, so here's Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, testifying before Congress and getting interrupted by Medea Benjamin of Code Pink.
Not shrinking back. Not in the face of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Not in the face of an intensifying strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific and around the world.
If the witness will suspend, and I ask that everyone again respect this hearing, we will suspend until the room is cleared.
So we still don't have any sense of, other than the plan that was floated by the Military Intelligence Bureau to just completely clear out Gaza, of where this is going.
Right.
Like what? Okay, they killed this battalion commander, along with countless other civilians. They're going to try to kill other Hamas battalion commanders. They say they're going to dismantle the organization, whatever that actually means, because the organization, broadly speaking, has some significant level of support from the Palestinian people, which means that whatever organization you dismantle, the one that is put in its place will have a similar politics,
right,
or else they won't win the support of the people. As you'll hear a lot of Palestinians say, the party that advocates negotiations with Israel is out of political favor because they've been negotiating for 30 to 40 years, and over those 30 to 40 years, they've got less. The economy has gotten worse. Their travel restrictions have gotten tighter. They're down to electricity 4 hours a day before the strike. There's no hope, no sense of dignity, connected to those negotiations. So you're going to wind up with somebody who says, well, we're going to then confront Israel.
Likely.
Right. So logically, that seems to leave the IDF, the intelligence ministry plan of we're going to clear out the north, occupy it, and then we're going to clear out the south and push the Palestinians into Sinai Peninsula. Is that your sense of, what's your sense of what the actual plan is here?
I have no sense of what the actual plan is. And that's not surprising at all, because there was no sense of what the actual plan is in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's no sense of what the actual plan is, short of, quote, whatever it takes in Ukraine, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, perhaps close to 100,000 casualties on both sides, if not more. There is no plan. And I do, again, this is not we have to have room for Israel to disincentivize the conduct of Hamas. Israel cannot say, we will not retaliate, because that gives Hamas a green light to massacre more civilians. So that can't be the case either. But I just don't have confidence in Western war strategy anymore. And I also think we're going to talk about this with Lindsey Graham in a little bit. I think when you listen to IDF commanders, it's really hard to understand or to give them the benefit of the doubt in the fog of war mentality. Because again, some things are up in the air, but I don't see anything concrete. I don't see what are you going to do about, let's say hundreds of civilians die. Hamas is, even though their leaders are in Qatar, right. You get the battalion commander guys, they're out of the way. Does that make the situation better or worse? I mean, at what point does that make the situation better and worse? And how does that make the situation better or worse? And then what do you do afterwards? And actually, the news reports indicate that's still being discussed, as opposed to, well, we've had this terrorist threat living next to us for years. If they massacre civilians and a ground war is necessitated, what is the next step? I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that you have to have that if you are going to wage war on this scale. Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.